This Obsidian Vault is built off my own personal one, but it doesn't have any community plugins, so there's no data view queries or any complexity like that. Going up to the top left, opening up the left sidebar, and top right, opening up the right sidebar, you can see this is the workspace I'm in, which has a left ribbon, a left sidebar, a main window, and then a right sidebar. Going down to the bottom left into the settings, so you can see we've got the editor tab. Scrolling down through, I haven't changed anything from when you open up a brand new vault, but for those of you in a different language, I would make sure that the spell check is in the appropriate language, so the dictionary is actually in your language. You can see there's a drop down there. In the files and links settings, I have confirm file deletion on at the moment. We can turn that off later. I have it so that it automatically updates internal links, which saves me doing it manually. At the moment, the default location for notes is the vault folder. So looking into the files core plugin on the left hand side, the no community plugin is the vault folder. That's the main folder, everything else is under, and if I add a new note, at the moment the default location is the vault folder. If I right click, go down to delete, there's the pop-up menu, so if I say don't ask again and delete, you can see the confirm file deletion has now been toggled off because that's what I asked it to do. You can toggle it back on here if you want to in settings, but the vault folder you can change to same folder as current file or in the folder specified below. And this will let you select any folder that you've created. So at the moment we've got project sources templates, and I can select any of those or the folders inside of that. I'm going to leave it for vault folder at the moment. The linking settings are all default. It's the easiest and quickest and simplest ways of doing it. I've turned on detect all file extensions, so any other files like Excel files, Word files, or any coding files you may have, this allows Obsidian to find them. And similar to the new note location, I have a default location for new attachments, and this is in a specified folder, which is the sources images folder. If I open up the sources folder, I can right click and then say set as attachment folder, and that's how I set it. You can see at the top right, attachment has been set. If I want to change it, I can do the same thing, right click and set attachment folder. Now when I go into the settings, you can see it's changed the folder location. So I actually want it to be images, so I'm going to set as attachment folder. This means that any screenshots that you put inside of Obsidian go to the images folder rather than just getting added into that default vault location. The appearance tab, I've got it in dark mode because that's my preference. You could change it to light mode or adapt to the system so it changes as the system changes. Accent color, this is default, but you can change it to any color you want. For themes, you can add a community theme. I'm not going to do that because this is just a bare bones Obsidian Vault. But with the font, I have added the Inter font, so I can click in manage and then you can select any of the fonts. The reason I picked Inter is because if we go into a file, I go line and then greater than, it turns it into an arrow, and I like using these inside of my notes, and the same as when I push equals and then greater than, it turns it into a different arrow. If I zoom in, you can see that a little bit clearer, and I like being able to see that, and the default font doesn't have that. So I've got Inter for the interface font, text font, and monospace font. For those brand new to Obsidian, what I did to zoom in just a second ago, so doing this, is I'm holding Control on my keyboard and then scrolling with my mouse. And that is this setting right here, so font size is being zoomed in and out because of this toggle setting that I have on, so it lets me go zoom in and out. And you can also use a trackpad. I don't have one, but you could use it. And then everything else down here is kept to default. Hotkeys are all default. Inside the About section, you can see the current version. Obviously, this is version 1.35, so when you watch this video, it may have updated, so just bear that in mind. I have automatic updates turned on, and you can't turn the insider builds on unless you have an account that gives you access to insider builds, which I do, and you can purchase that for a one-time fee, I believe, of $25, and you can manage all of your account settings inside of here. Then we get to the core plugins, and this is where Obsidian terminology can get a little bit confusing. So plugins, core plugins, are developed by the Obsidian team. So being able to see all of your files and folders is a files core plugin. Search is a core plugin. Bookmarks, core plugin. Outline, tags, backlinks, outgoing links, they're all core plugins by the development team. What I'm not using in this vault is community plugins, which are developed by the community, so they are checked by the development team, but they're not developed by the team, which means if the developer of the community plugin decides, I don't have time for this, then development stops, whereas the core plugins are always developed with the core app. I've turned off a couple of these core plugins because I don't use them, and then I've turned on Workspaces because I think it's quite useful. And going down into the section that has core plugins in, these are the settings for the core plugins. Backlinks, I turn this on, which means the backlinks show at the bottom of the document. Canvas settings, I leave all as default, but you can change all of these things if you want to in future. The command palette, again, I leave default. File recovery, I've actually added the history length, so I've made that 100, so it's 100 days where it keeps the snapshots. So if I want to change something 3 weeks later, it still has the history rather than removing doing it. Note composer settings left the same. Page preview, I've actually toggled off the editing view, which means I don't have to hold control to show the page preview. So if I add an outgoing link inside of this page to itself, so it's linking to itself, and I hover my mouse over, this is the page preview. It's showing me the page in a preview pop-up. And if I toggled the setting on, so we're in the editing view and I turn that on, now when I hover the mouse over, it doesn't do anything. I have to hold control on my keyboard for it to pop up. Now, this is a preference thing, so I'm going to turn that off because I like to be able to see it straight away, and you can change the setting for all of the core plugins in here as well. Then inside of the quick switcher, I've turned on show all file types because I want to show all of the file types inside of Obsidian. So when I search, I want to be able to search for the Excel document, the Word document that I may have stored in my Obsidian Vault folder on my device. Then with the templates core plugin, I have a folder in here. So templates folder, let's just delete this file. And you can see here is the templates folder. And inside this folder, I have 4 different templates, which I'll go through in a second. But going back to the appearance tab, I've actually changed something inside of the ribbon menu. So all of those core plugins that we've just gone through and all of these settings, if I go to manage, some of them appear in the ribbon, which is these buttons on the left-hand side. And you can reorder these. So the manage workspace at the moment is down the bottom. If I drag it up, it now reorganizes. So it's now second. At the moment, I have the create new canvas off. If I plus, you can see it's now been added to the bottom. If I minus, it now takes it away, and that's saved for the workspace that you're in. So done. And that's where the Workspaces core plugin comes in handy. I personally add hotkeys. You can see I've searched for Workspace in the core plugins, just so it's easier to find. But when I go to the hotkeys and type in Workspace, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the Workspaces core plugin. These hotkeys are specific to the workspace. I've added this one, Control-Shift-O, and added this one, Control-S, and replaced another hotkey that mapped this, which was the save current files. So if I add and go Control-S, you can see there's a conflict. What I've done is I've just found it, got rid of it, and now we have Control-S to save the workspace. So I can use that hotkey Control-Shift-O, which brings up a menu to switch between a home workspace or a temp workspace. If I click on home, it takes me to the home workspace, and you can see the ribbon menu has now changed. So going back into the ribbon configuration, this setting is saved for the workspace you're in. So if you don't use workspaces, it will always stay the same. However, if you use workspaces, which is what I'm going to show you through this video, this order will change with the workspace setting. So what just happened when I pushed the workspace button? Well, it opened up this side panel, and brought me to my home cards canvas. So this is a canvas. I can add squares by double clicking. I can type inside of these squares. I can add different cards this way, add files in, so select a file from the vault, add media in, so this could be pictures or videos or website links. And what this allows me to do is then highlight lots of things, move them around, link them together, add colors to the cards. So if I delete all of those and zoom in again, you can see what I've done is I've created a card called Done, created a card called Working in Progress, and created a card called To Do. Now, the downside of this is when you click on it, you can't see the cards underneath it. You click away, you can now see the cards above it. So an alternative, if we right click on the canvas and then go create group, call it done, push enter, now I have a group instead of a card, and this card is project 3, which is actually a file. If I go into the files core plugin, you can see project 3 is a file inside of the projects folder. And if I drag this down, it's now in the done group. I click on done, I can change the color to green, and now project 3 is done. And if I hold control on my keyboard, I'm on Windows, click, drag, and then let go with my mouse, I've now duplicated that group and that card. I don't want the card in there twice, so click and delete, change the color to orange, double click, WIP, enter. I now have a work in progress group, control, click, drag, drop, color, red, double click, to do, enter, and now I have a group. So now when I drag these down, if I click on the group, I can then move them all together rather than them being individual on cards. So with a little bit of reorganization, you can see now I've changed the home cards canvas to groups, and now I want to save this workspace. So it doesn't go back to the old one, it goes back to the new workspace. So Control S on my keyboard, and I want it to save to home, so click on home. So now if I was to click into this project 3, so I double click on the name, I'm now in project 3. If I want to go back to the home, I can go Control-Shift-O, because that's the hotkey I picked, push enter, because it's already highlighting home, and it takes me back to my home. And this canvas dashboard is my personal preference. So if you wanted to add another project in, you can come over, click, drag and drop. Now you've got the project in, and you can resize that as much as you want, or you can come down to the bottom of the canvas, drag it in, search for whatever project you want to add. So let's go project 3, and now you've added that card in. But because Obsidian is so extensible and you can do so many different ways, there are a couple of other options that you could use just with core Obsidian. If you like a folder system, you can see you can have as many folders as you want because it's on your system. I've got a video folder and an essay folder, and you can separate projects up in the folder system. However, you can't manually rearrange these. So I can't move project 2 above project 1, I can just move it to a folder, which isn't ideal when you want to look at statuses of projects. So one option is creating a folder for done, working in progress, or to do. However, there is another plugin called Bookmarks, which, as you can see, I've added a group. It's a bookmark group, which is called to do, and in there is essay 1. Inside of work in progress and done are the other projects. These are separate from the canvas, but it means I can move project 3 up into work in progress. If I want project 2 above project 3, I can drag it up. So this gives you a manual or custom sorting option, and then you can drag it down into done, which gives you more flexibility inside of the sidebar if that's a preference you would prefer. To make things a little easier to see, I'm going to click on the Bookmarks core plugin and drag it down in the sidebar until it shows purple. Now let go, and now I've got the bookmarks down the bottom and files on the top. And I'm going to do the same with the home cards backlinks. I'm going to drag that down, and the outgoing links, I'm going to drag that down as well till the line is next to the other core plugin. And now I've rearranged the sidebars. Those of you with an eagle eye may notice that the video 1 isn't in the bookmarks panel, and that's because you have to add a file into bookmarks. So if I right click on video 1, it says bookmark, so I can add it to bookmark, or I can come into the canvas, right click and bookmark, which brings up this window. That's the path of where it is. That's the name, so I can rename it if I don't want it to be called video 1. So maybe I want it to be called video project 1, and then I can add it to a group, or I can just leave it empty. So if I leave it empty and save, you can see it's outside those groups. So if I collapse them all, this one is outside. Let's say I want that to go into to-do. I now have video project 1 in to-do. I click it and it opens up video 1. To explain these purple words, I'm going to go into the sidebar, into the Files core plugin, hold Control on my keyboard, left click on project, and it's brought up another tab. I'm going to click on that tab, drag it over, and now I have a split screen of video 1 and project 1. You can see it's changing the selection inside of the Files core plugin for the file that I'm active on. This is called metadata, and I've explained that in previous videos. I'll leave a link up in the top right, which are exactly the same as these. So these are called inline tags, and what I've done is I've pushed hash on my keyboard, and then it's come up with a big drop down, and then I can type words to add a new tag, or just click a tag, and I've added the project tag. Inside of the metadata, or more specifically the front matter, I need to add the tag as written. But if I start typing out project, you can see there's no autocomplete. So if you do misspell something, it will add a new tag. So if I get rid of the T and go to the tags pane, this is the core plugins tag pane, we've got project 9, but then there's also this project, which obviously isn't what we want. So this method is prone to mistakes if you're just using core features. But why would you even bother tagging projects? The first answer is because of the tags pane, you can click on project and it will bring up all of those results inside of the search core plugin. We click on these buttons down here, we can then collapse results. So it shows us the file, and the number represents the line that it's in. So inside of the project 1, you can see it's just project because it's inside the front matter. However, inside of video 1, because they're on lines, it shows a 1 result, and it shows the line that the tag project is in. So when I click on that, it takes me exactly to the tag. Whereas if I click on project 1, it just opens up the file. So you could use tags as status. So you see we've got to do there. If I click on the to do tag, it brings up all of those files in the to do search. That's one way of looking for them. You can look for them through the tags pane. However, if I go to my workspaces and then go to load temp, so I use the ribbon button that time instead of the hotkey, and load home, you can see all of those sidebar things have now gone back to the way they were when we saved the workspace. And now if I go to the home search canvas, inside of these cards, so these are cards, not groups, if I double click, you can see I can edit what's inside the card. And here is what's called a code block. I know that because we've got these icons, these symbols surrounding the code. I've written query because this is core. It's just a core query, which is essentially search. And I'm looking for the project tag and the done tag. So when I click out, it does the search and looks for those things. It works exactly the same way the core plugin works inside of the search on the sidebar, but this is inside of a file. So there's project 3. So when I zoom out, you can see this is looking for project done, project work in progress, project to do. And you can see this is where the difference comes in using front matter like project 1 or tags like in the SA template and SA1. Using inline tags tend to clutter up search results, which is why front matter may be more useful. So Control-Shift-O, let's go back to home. But how do you actually add in a new project? The first way is to add a new note, but you would need to change the default note location, remember from the settings. So inside File and Links, you would change the Vault folder to in folder specified below, and then add maybe Projects folder. So now when you push the button, you can see it's automatically added to the Projects folder, or you can go into the Files Core plugin and right click on the folder you want to add a new note into. Let's say this is SA2, but now we want all that information in. We want to use a template from the Templates folder. We've got an SA template, which has some tags in, a project template, which has some front matter tags in, source template, which is the same as the project, but with a source tag instead, because it's a source, not a project, and then a video template, which again has those inline tags. So inside SA2, I can either click on the button, the one that says Insert Template, which comes up with the list of all the files in that folder, project, video, SA source. Just a reminder, that's inside the Templates core plugin settings, inside of this folder location. But because in Obsidian you can add hotkeys to anything, if we come to the hotkeys and go Template, I've actually added a hotkey, Control: to Insert Template. So when I'm inside of my SA2 file, Control: brings up that menu. I can then type while my hands are on the keyboard to SA and then enter. And now it's added that SA template to SA2. So again, this is the SA template, and inside SA2, it's added in those tags. At this point, this file is going to show up in the search. So this is a project and to do. So you can see SA2, there it is. There's the project tag, there's the to do tag. If we want to put it into the canvas, we can then drag it in from there and say, okay, this is to do. Or, like I said, you can come into here, drag something in, then search for SA2, then it will add the card. Or if you want to use the bookmarks, you can right click, bookmark, and then add SA2 into to do, save. Now when you go to the bookmark, you can see it's in to do. Again, I'm going to go back to the home, so Control-Shift-O and then enter to home. If you want to delete it, you can delete it from the canvas, but that doesn't delete the actual file, so you'll need to come to the files and then delete the file from there. For sources, it works exactly the same way. You can right click into the sources, add a new note, and then use the template, go in here, source, and then type in whatever information you want. Maybe you want a URL link or something else. You can add that inside the source template. So when you create a new source, it will add in maybe a place to add a URL link to whatever you found online. And inside the search canvas, you can see we've got tasks down the bottom as well, because core Obsidian searches for tasks. So if we go into this card, I've got the same sort of code block. I'm querying, and then I'm looking for, I've got task, done, and then it's closed. So to make sure it's complete, so you can see there's an X in that task. If I click in, you can see this task has been completed. If I go to this one, it's looking for a work in progress, so I've actually added WIP to the task, so that's what it's searching for if you want to be that specific. Or if you just want to look for a task that you need to do, so we can come into here, we've got an empty task that needs to be done, so it's coming up in search. Something else worth noting is when I go to the workspace, you can see I have a temp workspace, and if I click that, it shows project 2 and source 1. So when you're working on something, i.e. writing, you can use the Workspaces plugin to create a workspace, so you can save a workspace. For example, if I wanted these down the bottom and then I also wanted the bookmark down the bottom, I can click on the button, I can then go example and then push save. Now I've saved the example workspace. So if I go back to the temp, so load temp, you can see all those things have been moved back up. If I Control-Shift-O, now I have the 3 options, click example, I've now got all of these down the bottom, and this is what I'm working on. So this is a nice way to save where you're at in the working process.